Why don't we start? Pam's on her way up from parking, and we want to be real tight today if we can. So maybe we could just and not take roll quite yet, but maybe introduce ourselves in the audience. Just go around the room and say who you are, who you represent. We know Seth, I guess, of course.
Good morning, I'm John Simmons. I'm the administrator for Education and Learning at the Oregon Department of Education.
I'm Betsy Hammond, education reporter at the Oregonian.
Doug Wilson, Legislative Fiscal Office.
Doug Wells, Quality Ed Commission and Children's Institute.
Dana Hepburn, Children's Institute.
Morgan Allen, Oregon School Boards Association.
Wendy Swanson, representing myself, but I teach at Portland State.
David Williams, Portland Public Schools.
David Mandel, Speaker's Office.
Dave Porter, dual language immersion advocate and study abroad advocate.
Dr. Dapo, Operation EC.
Jim Anderson, EZ, and King Site Council.
Rhonda Nelson, Early Learning Division.
Megan Irwin, Early Learning Division.
Phil Donner, Chalkboard Project.
Kylie Grant, Chalkboard Project.
Tara Rupley, Early Learning System Director.
Karen Twain of the Board of Department Ed.
Mark Lewis, Director of STEM Education for the OEIB.
Hilda Rosselli, Director of College and Career Readiness, OEIB.
Great, thank you very much. Well, Duncan, are you
Sitting next to you?
Yeah,
Somebody that used to work here?
Somebody, yeah. Ron's not gonna let that go. That's good. Duncan, are you on the phone here? No, did he text in? So
He is looking for the number from me, so I'm sending that to him right now.
Okay. Thought I'd be real smart here to get Pam just to she coming in the door here.
Maybe if you want to just review the agenda, and then
Okay,
I can
let's
do
do
the
that.
process review, and then by the time
Okay,
she
let's do
gets
that.
here, we'll be ready to roll.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Traffic seems to be interesting. This time there was nothing coming up from Salem, but here in Portland you got quite a bit, I guess. So, so it changes, doesn't it? We are going to change the agenda here. 3.0 is not going to present today, and we want to run pretty tight today. We got some other meetings that are coming at about 10:45 or so, so we want to move right along. So Whitney, why don't you tell us about the process review and follow, etc.
So, thank you, Dick. If you recall from last meeting, those that were involved, we heard from the Oregon Department of Education with a couple of their priority proposals. And then we heard from the Youth Development Commission with their priorities. And I think the priorities that Rob Saxton presented got a lot of attention and excitement. And so I just wanted to review again for the subcommittee the process, which will be that for the next 3 meetings, we'll hear these presentations from each of the agencies about their priorities. And then we're going to have a couple of work sessions, one before the August retreat and one after. And at those work sessions, that will be where we will have some format and criteria for you all, and we'll begin the process of kind of refining, combining, prioritizing. Ultimately, what will come out of it is a set of recommendations from this subcommittee that will go to the full board, that will be presented to the governor and help him as he builds his budget.
When on the schedule are they supposed to go from subcommittee to full board?
So we'll in the August 12th retreat will be a first reading for the full board. So we'll have a kind of draft set of recommendations to present to them that you will have already worked through, and they'll have an opportunity to ask questions and give feedback for additional requests for additional information. And then on September 9th it will come to the board for their final approval.
Obviously, we're in the investment part of our subcommittee, but there's that tension between the outcomes. I think everyone's pretty anxious to move the ball or increase the outcomes that we find ourselves in our state. So, how do you see this play? What's the roadmap for the outcomes and investments, chicken and egg reporting monthly? Do you see that? How do you see that?
So we are really focused on the investments for the next few months because that's just where we are in the cycle. But we're going to have some new data around outcomes that will be coming to you at the August retreat. And so I think once we get through this budget recommendation process, that this subcommittee can then kind of turn its attention to looking at the outcomes and the strategies for reaching the outcomes, and kind of building a map for the full board about how to make sure that our strategies are achieving outcomes. I would see that kind of as the next thing after the building of the investment strategies.
Okay,
Hi,
good.
Pam.
Okay. Seth, can we, let's go with the roll. We already introduced people here around us, so let's go with our committee.
Dick Withnell.
Here?
Pam Curtis.
Here.
Ron Saxton.
Here.
Hannah Vandering.
Hannah is going to be gone today. She's on vacation.
Duncan Weiss.
Duncan, are you on the phone? No. Okay, and those on the phone, you want to introduce yourselves. Nancy, I believe you were there.
Toya Fake with Care for Children.
Okay.
Ellen Mackey, Social Venture Partners, Portland.
Peter Tromba, OEIB.
Okay, thank you. As I noted as we started, the 3.0 on the agenda, they will not be presenting today. And we just had Whitney's review and follow-up. So let's have the 4.0 on the agenda. Come present right in front of us here. We'll use the screen there and go from there. Hilda?
So thank you very much. For the record, my name is Hilda Rosselli. I serve as the director for the college and career readiness activities within the Oregon Education Investment Board and some other activities. And I am pleased today to represent a committee that was formed out of Senate Bill 222 that was charged with several important tasks. And as Senator Mark Cass often likes to state, the efforts that we have in our state to help students make that a successful transition to post-secondary education are very successful quite often with our students who probably would already be going on to college. And his major concern is around how we are supporting the needs of students who, for various reasons, might not see themselves as college going. They may not have access to a support system that helps them navigate. They may not have really thought about the options that are available or have the tools at hand to be able to access what is needed to move forward. So the committee, which is made up of, it's chaired first of all by Nancy Golden, so I'm honored to be able to present this particular charge with you today as she had another commitment. But the committee is chaired by Nancy Golden, and the other members include Senator Mark Cass, Senator Bruce Starr, Representative John Huffman, Representative Lou Frederick, Nori Juba, who had also been on the Higher Ed Coordinating Commission last year from Central Oregon, and Peyton Chapman, the principal of Lincoln High School here in Portland. We have a report that is due to the legislature October 1st, 2014. We have met 7 times, and through that period of time, we have spent a lot of our energy looking at the research, looking at policies, examining other states' efforts in this area, looking at why our previous efforts in this state may not have resulted in the outcomes that we were looking for, and really talking to a lot of the practitioners who are on the ground trying to work this out so that we could be very aware of what barriers exist and what we could do to address that. The committee has in their hands a full concept paper that includes quite a bit of detail
around informing their actions towards potential legislation in the next biennium. With that, we have addressed issues like a funding formula that we think will really truly address the costs that are borne by both the K-12 partners and the post-secondary partners. We have taken into consideration the strategic investments that have already been made to fund test exam fees for advanced placement and international baccalaureate students. We have really struggled with the issues around instructor qualifications, and let me just explain why that's an issue. When you're looking at dual credit courses, well, let me start first of all. AP and IB have a whole process that's spelled out and nationally agreed upon around how instructors are selected, trained, what the curriculum is, and what the exams are. And when you talk about dual credit, this is where we start into this transition periods that we're so concerned about at OEIB. This is really requiring a very close partnership between our post-secondary partners in K-12, and they work together to identify instructors at the high school level who may be qualified to teach dual credit courses. In some cases, it is the community college and four-year institutions faculty who are teaching the courses, but you can imagine when you think about all of our high schools in this state that may not always be an easy fix to be able to have a community college or university faculty member come and teach a course at a high school on a regular basis. There are concerns around accreditation. We have met with the president of the Northwest Accreditation Agency, and we've also looked at some potential areas. And I bring this up because one of the strategies is going to at least provide some solutions. So
can you just, really rough, on this particular issue, are we above average, below average, bottom of the heap, top of the chart?
I would say we're about average. Some states now are really moving forward. Ohio has some very progressive legislation that was passed in 2013. We met with folks from the state of Washington because we thought they were far ahead. We really figured out they're not that far ahead. There are, of course, initiatives such as the Tulsa Promise and now Tennessee as a whole state that is really looking at some economical measures to make higher ed so much more affordable. But I would say we're right in the
just
middle.
trying to calibrate.
Yeah.
We're not 48th
Yeah.
trying to move up. We're
No.
maybe 25th trying to move up.
No, but I think this is a really important question because it brings up the question of who's getting the services and who's not getting the services and where are they available and where are they not. So just to be clear, we're using a broad term here of acceleration to describe this, what we think of as opportunities, and there are multiple types, for students to enroll in college courses while they're in high school and earn college credit. And this, we've used this term broadly to include so many different models. I've had the opportunity to go visit early college programs. I'm very familiar already with International Baccalaureate, the AP options, and the dual credit that we've involved, both for Gen Ed and career and technical. These are all encompassed in this, and they all have little variations in how they operate. And let me just tell you, we lack a solid, accurate way to document all of this. So that's one of the issues we're grappling with. So in addition to their report on how the Accelerated Learning Committee will be proceeding with some recommendations, there were some one-time strategic investments that were identified as being needed to accompany policies that may be coming out of this committee that would increase access for all high school students to obtain at least 9 college credits or 3 courses. I mean, we're trying to mirror the achievement compacts here, but at least every student in Oregon should have access to at least those 3 courses at no cost. So that's our baseline metric that we're using within the committee to sort of examine where we're going.
Any three or a particular?
Well, then if you read through all of the rest of our paper, we repeatedly emphasize that these need to be transferable credits that students actually can use. And so we're very intent on tying these to the Oregon transfer module or to a career technical certificate that's recognized.
But not necessarily that they be any particular subject matters.
No, I'm going to share with you some progress that's being made though around, well, I might as well just share that now. Yesterday at the Accelerated Learning Committee, at the request of the chair and members, the Oregon Community College Association has been working with the Oregon Confederation of Oregon Administrators, and they have identified close to 4 courses that they really believe need to be available statewide. Those include I just want to make sure I get this absolutely right because we've discussed several options here. This just happened yesterday. So we're talking about Writing 121, which is a basic college writing course, Math 111, a biology or a science course that could be one of the areas that is required, and speech. So there are there's some real traction around those courses.
Great, thank you.
Okay. So these 3 strategies are ones that we feel may be needed to accompany everything that we've been learning about and focused on to make the policy work maximized. So let me walk through each strategy, and I'm using the format that Whitney provided for us. In some cases, you'll note that the very same outcomes are appropriate, even though I've just repeated the slide. So let's look at the very first one. This is based on what we currently lack, but is underway right now, and we anticipate getting a first run of this next month, and that is a geographic map that shows us exactly which high schools do not offer at least 3 courses currently for students. I cannot tell you how shocked I was when I started working for this committee to find that we didn't have that data readily accessible.
So what percent of high schools are you predicting that will be?
I'm predicting at least probably between 10 and 15%. And then I don't want to bet you on it, but I will come back and let you know the actual numbers. And so our belief is that we need to first of all focus on those communities where there's either nothing, or there's 1 course, or there might be a course that really doesn't even guarantee a transfer into a general Oregon transfer module. And what we're proposing is that everything we've learned from programs such as Eastern Promise and successful early college programs is that you have to have a strong partnership between the higher ed folks and the K-12 folks to agree on, well, what courses do we need to offer? What are those courses going to look like? How often are they going to be offered? Who's going to teach them? Do we have qualified instructors? What are going to be the common outcomes and assessments? And assuring that there really is a communication plan for students and parents. And I want to back up for 1 second and say, our work is made better because of the investment that is just launching this year, where we have picked up 5 replication sites for the Eastern Promise program, because Eastern Promise does this work. That's one of the major pillars. But when you look at the geographic map, we already have 18 counties that are not even included in that. So my guess is those 18 counties will be a primary focus of where we think we need to look at.
So this still sounds very site focused. I mean, how does, using 21st century technology fit into this?
I will say that
you can take all kinds of college
Right,
classes without having a teacher in the room with you these days.
Well, I will tell you that the literature on this, and I spent quite a bit of time looking at this, there are courses that are online. I will tell you that the research is very, very weak in terms of this being the best method to reach students who typically are underrepresented in the populations that we're talking about. I've taught online courses. This requires a very high level of internal motivation, a focus where I'm going to have access to a laptop, independent nature that does not require me checking in all the time with an instructor. And what we know is that a lot of the students we're really trying to reach in the opportunity gap, they're going to need some scaffolding to be successful. Online learning is a great tool, and it is one of the tools that we will use, but my guess is we will still need the partnership and an instructor on site using more of a hybrid model or a flipped classroom, where the material may be available statewide, but somebody's going to need to still be there. But you have to build the partnership and open up the door to say, this is how you create these opportunities for students, this is how you communicate and recruit students, and open it to all students, not just those that are already on a college track. Great question, though. Thank you so much.
Where is the, where's, by definition, accelerated learning committee, and what's the balance? I guess, Whitney, is a question for you on the picture of the total education, then what's the balance to ones who aren't going to go to college?
I think that's a really good question, and Hilda can speak more articulately, but what we've found is that for all students, that giving them the access to the college level courses engages them and often will bring them to the finish line and encourage them to actually
kind of a high water mark.
Oh my goodness,
high water
yes.
brings up
The research is incredibly supportive. In fact, it shows the difference between, and this is referenced in this paper that you received, but some fascinating research, particularly on first generation and students of color. There's a huge difference between students who take one course for 3 credits while they're in high school and students who take two courses, 6 credits or more in terms of their completion of high school and their matriculation into college and their success in college. They've even tracked it to find out that it increases the likelihood the students will graduate from college.
Where's the tech schools come into play then?
Career and technical education. Well, that's why we've left this open enough to say that the courses may be, the second tier of courses will always need to be those courses that are available for career technical. But let me point out a little nuance that I had to learn the hard way. I didn't learn it, but a lot of people did. When their student or child took a course and was told this will transfer, and it was a career technical ed course, it would definitely transfer if the student went to a community college that offered that as either part of an industry approved certificate or an AA. If I changed my mind and I decided to go to, let's say, Southern Oregon and pursue a degree in English literature, that course might not have transferred. And that's where parents and kids felt like, wow, I lost time and energy there, and they might have paid for it. And it didn't transfer, and there was a lot of confusion. Also, OSU, I talked to the community college president who knows all of this, and his son, when he transferred into a pre-engineering program, found that the course that he took didn't transfer because pre-engineering had its own specified prerequisite. And so if you don't track really carefully and make sure that you've got courses that will transfer, like part of the Oregon transfer module, students can feel like they're not maximizing those opportunities.
To mention, Ron's about the technology, the Oregon Youth Authority incarcerated kids are doing just exactly what we're talking about here online.
Absolutely. I also listened to a story while I was stuck in traffic about individuals in our prisons who are pursuing AA degrees. It just made me feel good. All right, so in terms of the outcomes...
You thought we were going to let you go fast, didn't you?
Yeah.
I think I had been warned.
Well, let me just give a shout then. Oregon Youth Authority is graduating a bachelor of science person this coming Sunday.
That's fabulous.
And they're allowing him to walk.
That's fabulous. We see this as really just, this is one of the tools that is going to be needed to get us to 40-40-20. I mean, there are a lot of different pieces of this, and this is definitely one of the tools. So in terms of a key outcome tied to the achievement compacts, obviously this is going to increase the number of students who are completing 3+ college courses while they're enrolled in high school. And then we went and outlined exactly the annual data that we would be using to measure improvement. And this is one of the ahas that the committee has been able to uncover, is that we don't have reliable statewide data that pulls all of this into one place. Fortunately, I think with the longitudinal data system, this will become easier, but in the meantime, we are specifying in the paper the ways that we want every piece of data to be tracked from here on out, so that we're not trying to figure out, okay, well, this report tells us this and this one over here, but they don't equate. We also believe that a moderate investment would support the development of partnerships, particularly in these communities that offer fewer than 3 courses, by doing the following tasks. It will help those communities access and figure out what are the best learning needs for their community. Maybe it's an early college program, maybe it's offering dual credit courses, maybe it's filling those classes for advanced placement. We had an interesting conversation with a national group that is tracking, they don't have Oregon data, but it's fascinating to know how many empty seats are in our advanced placement and international baccalaureate classes. And that's one way in which we could, encourage more students who don't see themselves as necessarily on a college track to try out an advanced placement course and experience college level rigor. In terms of equity considerations, this is a known strategy, one that we know makes a huge difference in terms of high school completion and success in post-secondary education. And we're sitting right across from the Oregon University System offices, at least for right now. And I'm delighted to tell you that 2 different studies that Bob Kieran did on dual credit impact followed the Oregon data on just that piece to figure out, okay, did these students move on into college and how did they do with their GPA and their retention in college? And those reports are available. I'd be glad to give you the link to them. And he has data. He's not doing a 3rd report, but he's sending me raw data, thinking that I will have time and fun analyzing all of that raw data. So I'm looking forward to that. In terms of the alignment with the equity lens, I wanted to also call out that in the equity lens, we acknowledge the very important role of the community colleges and the post-secondary institutions in meeting not only our 40-40-20 goal, but looking at opportunity gaps and addressing equity issues. Other considerations, and you'll see this repeated, so I'll just mention it once here. This is a huge implication. I'm working with Elizabeth Cox-Brand right now at the Community College Workforce Development to tease out, because of course we don't sort it this way now, to tease out the amount of funding that is spent currently by our community colleges on developmental education that specifically is targeting post-secondary remediation classes. These are defined as those classes that are taken by high school graduates within 2 years of their graduation from high school that already are telling them, oh my goodness, you may have graduated from high school, but you're not college ready. And we've given you a placement test and you have placed too low to begin in the course that you should be starting in, and we're going to put you in a developmental ed course. I have several very devastating facts to share with you. First of all, Yuri Theismann in Texas, who is a researcher that studies this, likes to refer to developmental education as the Roach Motel of higher ed. And I coming from Florida years ago, I know all about Roach Motels. They're those little things that people go in, little bugs go into, and really, things are not good for them when they walk out. And the truth is that the same, or if they walk out, but the same is true for students. They have dismal outcomes once they get into developmental ed. And part of it is developmental ed hasn't revamped itself to be innovative and appealing to students. So if you didn't do well in math, and let me just point to you here, I know that's not true. But if you didn't do well in math, then you'd come over and let's give you a math course with a lot more math. Right. And that's your first introduction to college. And even though you're interested in maybe environmental science or art, we're going to get you into this math course. And I watched my own great niece struggle with that, and she lost interest in college. while she was kind of wallowing in developmental ed courses. I'm delighted to tell you that the Community College Workforce Development looked at this terrible statistic, which is provided to us from the Regional Education Lab at Northwest. They ran a study on our high school graduates from Oregon between the years of 2004-05 and 2010-11. 63% of those students ended up in a developmental ed course in the community college. That's not counting those that might have gone on to Southern, Eastern, Western Oregon and might be in a developmental ed course. That's just community college. So they formed a work group, started in November. They had 4 meetings, and they have come forward with recommendations that were just heard Tuesday by the Best Practices and Student Transition Subcommittee, and they are going to be addressing developmental ed. But in the meantime, this is going to be one of those metrics that you'll want to monitor for everything that we do around grade 11 to 14 transitions. Secondly, we know that if we're smart and make available to students coursework that is transferable, then we will be saving students and their families not only time, but very importantly, the costs for post-secondary education.
Hey, Hilda, I'm just going to do a quick time check.
Yes, I bet.
Okay, you have about 10 more minutes, and
Okay.
you're about halfway, so.
Good.
But they'll
I can
still
do it.
ask you questions, but.
Pointing fingers.
So I'll talk.
No.
Should I talk
They will
faster,
still ask
Whitney?
you No, don't talk faster. Just maybe
So let's
high
talk
points.
about strategy 2. I'm going to interrupt Whitney and move on. So strategy 2 links back to this issue that we've spent a lot of time on in the Accelerated Learning Committee, and that is, how are we going to make sure that we have enough qualified instructors that meet the qualifications to teach these courses? So what is being proposed here is a one-time investment in the 2015-17 biennium. And it provides a way for high school instructors who, by the way, as a result of Measure 5 in Oregon, some of us remember that, were primarily starting to graduate with an MAT, a Master's in Arts in Teaching. And many of our community colleges believe that the gold standard for approving an instructor to teach a dual credit course is a master's degree in the content area, or at least, 27 to 32 hours of quarter hours on a content area. So what we have is a mismatch between the production of teachers for the last 14 years and the needs for this particular population. What we're proposing here is an investment that would create a set of online classes in the most high demand content areas that would be available statewide for our high school teachers. And let's be sensible and plan it around their schedules. We know that high school teachers are going to be much more likely to take those classes during the summertime. And having been a dean of a college of education here in Oregon for 10 years, I know, again, we do a mismatch because sometimes that's the time when the colleges and the universities don't offer as many courses. So we've got to really press on making this accessible, and I have a model that has been in place in this state that could be replicated. It would require some funding for teams of faculty to create those courses, and also to support some tuition costs for teachers to jumpstart them, and particularly those areas that we identify as the highest need. So, outcomes on this, again, these are going to look very similar, except that we added one on the second bullet. We believe this will also give us a chance to monitor regularly the supply and demand data on the number of qualified dual credit instructors by region. I've outlined again what that moderate investment would provide, and I think that the model I'd like to share with you that could be a beginning point was started here in 2001 in this state by a FIPSI grant, which, oh goodness, Nancy will charge me 10 cents. It's the Post-Secondary Innovation, Federal Innovation on Post-Secondary Education Grant. I think that's it. FIPSI. I've always known it as FIPSI. And those funds were provided to the state of Oregon in 2001 because Title I suddenly said, you have to have a literacy specialist in every Title I school. Well, guess what? We didn't have literacy specialists. And so we had to quickly find a way to provide teachers all over the state with access to the courses, graduate level courses that would be appropriate for a literacy specialist. What's so cool is we had, I think, 5 public universities all work together, bringing faculty in those expertise areas together to define the courses, develop the courses, actually agree on a common tuition, which is an unheard of phenomena in higher ed, and to approve the instructors to teach those classes. I'm delighted to say that the grant ended long ago, and if you Google Read Oregon, you will find that those courses are still available, and there's an 8-term schedule that teachers can use to plan when are they going to take those classes. Moving on, I will tell you that the Accelerated Learning Committee is continuing to seek other solutions. We believe that there may be some language that could be improved, and the use of waivers by community colleges to continue to increase the number of high school instructors. So this wouldn't be the only way we'd be approaching this problem. Strategy 3. What we've learned in looking at all of the literature and examining our own practices in Oregon is that you could make courses available. You could tell students about it, but if they don't have the supports necessary to help them access those courses and acquire some of the study skills necessary for academic rigor, then we will fail. We already know that there are some great models out there in the Southern Oregon Success Collaborative and in Eastern Promise that are drawing upon the best practices nationwide to support students as they transition. So what we're proposing is tracking several of our achievement compacts to look at what would happen as a result of this investment. We believe it will start as early as 9th graders on track, definitely impact high school graduation rates, and of course the number of students completing those college courses. In terms of a modest investment, this would help us create a statewide template of models that could be used by every high school in this state that lays out, if you want to help students, this is what you're going to have to provide. This is the creative way, the ways to use 21st century tools to get there, to fully maximize something that's already required in our high school diploma, and that is the individual profile and career plan, to access tools like our career information systems and Naviance, and to give better information to students and their families. We very clearly see these as having the same equity considerations that I've already shared with you, and the same other considerations. Earlier supports will decrease our reliance on post-secondary remediation and save students money and time. So those are the 3 strategies. How did I do, Whitney?
You did fantastic, Hilda. By the way, I will let you know Duncan Weiss was on the phone for a while, and he texted me that you were doing great.
Thank you, Duncan.
Easy for him to say, right?
I think he is now back in the HEC meeting, but
One thing I would comment is I would show the return on investment and what you're talking about if we don't do it.
That's why we're getting the developmental ed data, but I have to tease out, because developmental ed includes people who are returning as adults after 20 years out of school. I want to tease those costs out from the kids that are just 2 years from after graduating. So yes, we are getting that
Our
data.
investors are outside of this room, and they want to know what the dollar is being returned on what's about. And I think it's a very easy sell, because that's what we're all about, is educating the population in Oregon. But I think we miss it by not talking to our investors on sharing them with them, the pluses and the minuses and what have you. So I think that would be cool. Any questions?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, Pam?
So all of these are one-time investments. Can you talk a little bit about what's different after these investments go away, and of the what's different immediately, and what's different and sticks around 5 or 10 years from now?
What's different immediately is that what we're learning in our work is that when we convene people either through collaborative, like regional achievement collaboratives or early learning hubs, we are signaling from the state the importance of this work. We are galvanizing the people that need to be at the table together. We are providing them with the examples that this is how you can do this. We're not telling them how they have to do it, but we are setting the expectation that they must accomplish this for our students. That's the first immediate result. And this, likewise, for the high school instructor qualifications, will immediately bump up our pool. I think that once the revenue, on that one, once the revenue comes in that shows us that teachers do want these courses and they do want them online and they do want them in the summer, all of the universities will continue to sustain those offerings. Likewise, the districts will then start to slowly shift some of their professional development funds to pay for those tuition costs for the teachers. And the third one is in terms of a model, we will be monitoring and giving back feedback on how parents feel about the advising their kids are getting, how students are feeling about it, and in terms of the culture of the school through the TEL survey. There are ways that we'll be able to provide feedback and say you have to sustain that effort around advising.
So this is a seed the demand strategy.
Absolutely.
Ron?
I'm okay, we can move on. I think very helpful.
I really liked your question, Pam, because I think what we're about is just like an IPO, initial public offering, and we want to be selling this if that's we want to encourage people to invest what we're talking about. So these answers that the questions that you're asking, we have to have the answers, and not in, I'm talking myself, in the education speak, but on what the hardcore return on investment. Okay, good.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, next up the bat here. The ELC group. I don't think there's a conflict of interest, but Pam, you and I are involved in that. You're the chairman of that group, so if anything screws up, it's probably your fault.
But you're the chairman of this group.
Oh, yeah, that's right. It's been pointed out to me by peers.
We decided to balance out the table and have, we actually will have Dr. Dana Harganani also joining us. She's a member of the Early Learning Council, but what the point of our presentation team is to show that bridge in early learning between healthcare and the K-12 system. And you did hear from Karen Twain last time at the meeting, and so what we want to do is complete this process so that you understand the strategies that are there. So my name is Jada Rupley. For the record, I am the Early Learning System Director. With me, I have Megan Irwin, who is the Director of Policy and Program. And we have Karen Twain, who is the Director of Literacy Development for the Department of Education. And like I said, Dana will be joining us shortly. Thank you very much for taking the time. And you've already talked about your conflict of interest, Dick. Is that true?
You're right. Actually, no conflict at all. I think this is so important. Dick Alexander is the one who pointed out to the business community that early education was the farm team for a lot of our problems. So if we could correct that, then we would be very successful. And Dick did a great job. And David's here, and unfortunately Dick's not with us now. He's passed on, but he woke up a lot of us who were kind of our head in the ground, head in the sand. Go for it.
Thank you. So today we will be talking about the Early Learning Division's work at the direction of the Early Learning Council. And as many of you know, we're in the middle of implementing an ambitious redesign for Oregon's early learning system. It's fueled both by a set of reforms that were driven by the Early Learning Council and the Governor's Office in the last 3 legislative sessions, and by winning a federal grant race to the top. So today's presentation will do 3 things. It will provide context for the proposals we're putting forward for the next biennium by setting the table that we are going to briefly look at where we've been. We're also going to share our best thinking on policy agenda for children birth to 3. We oftentimes in the education arena don't speak about the importance of both children and families and how different that world is for those young families in that critical time for brain development. And it's very distinctly different than from preschool age into on their way to kindergarten. So building from that, we'll also share our proposed agenda for children from 3 until they enter kindergarten, with strong foundations on literacy, numeracy, and executive skills like learning to follow directions, paying attention, playing well with others. So as
You
you.
got that wrong.
I did.
So as you
Your wife
look
wanted
at.
me to point that out.
Did she read that for you?
Yeah.
So as we look at this, I want to highlight 5 themes that you'll see threaded throughout all of our proposals. Equity, the Early Learning Division and the Council are deeply committed to the work ensuring that services meet families, all families where they're at in culturally appropriate and responsive ways, as well as focus on a population on children and families of color, children and families living in poverty, and children and families experiencing multiple risk factors and challenges with their life. We're also going to look at quality, and this is something new in the early learning world that I want to make sure that we pay particular attention to, because we're going to thread that quality throughout. We strongly believe in the need to increase services in early learning and access to that for children and families, but more importantly, what we know now is that we have to focus on the quality of experiences that both children and families have if they're going to be ready for kindergarten. And in order to do that, I'm going to use a Lynn Saxton term about we have to be relentlessly focused on that quality for services. And finally, supporting and strengthening families. Unlike school, we don't have buildings, we don't have buses, and we don't have facilities to be able to look at that, which makes understanding the early learning system very difficult. This cliche is true. Parents are their first teachers, their most important teachers, and oftentimes their lifetime teachers. And if we think of all the things that we do as parents for our children, and where did we learn those? Oftentimes we learn those from generations before, from grandparents and parents. Our policy agenda must acknowledge the critical importance of families and engaging them in their child's development, and it has to be in a variety of settings. It needs to be in the doctor's office, it needs to be at home, it needs to be in their childcare, it needs to be in their preschool, and it needs to be in any natural setting where young children and their families spend time. So, we're also looking at the focus on foundations of literacy. At your last meeting, you heard from the K-12 system about the critical importance of third grade reading. We couldn't agree with that more, and that's actually on our agenda also. The foundation for reading at third grade starts at birth. Some will tell you it starts way before then. The council had a presentation at their last council meeting from Dr. Kent Thornburg, who talked about the fact that even before women decide to get pregnant, the nutrition and the stress in their life can affect the development. So it's really scary to think about that. But I want to talk about research that shows the word gap between low-income, working class, and middle-income children. There's a strong body of evidence to show that the word gap starts as early as 9 months. And so, yes, I am telling you that the achievement gap starts as early as 9 months with children. If you're looking for my stuff, I'm not.
No, I'll tell you what I'm looking for.
Okay.
Because it's a very long presentation, and I'm very concerned about time.
Oh, we're going to be fast.
No, because the part that I want to hear more about is the investment part.
Yeah.
The part about it being important, I think all of us believe.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't think we need the sales pitch very much. I think
Okay.
we need to know what you want us to do.
There you go. So early learning hubs, that is, we're going to talk about the redesign of our early learning system. The Early Learning Council, the governor's office, and the legislature chose to take an approach on coordinating that work across those silos, clarity about the outcomes, and yet giving local communities the power and the responsibility to choose the best ways to invest their resources. We are focusing on outcomes based on a delivery system, which you know are on the road to full statewide implementation by the end of this calendar year. So at this point, the council have approved 6 early learning hubs. Next week, they will take a look at the rest of the applications that are in on a competitive basis. And at their June 25th meeting, we'll decide which are ready to move forward. So with that, what I'd like to do is talk just one more thing. If you think about the fact that we're looking at 50% of babies born on Medicare and that we're 13th in the nation, and that isn't 13th, that's a good thing for foster care. It's more in terms of 46th in the nation in terms of where we aren't. So we're at the bottom 13th. So this is our graduation rate. The equivalent to the K-12 system of graduation rate is really kids ready for kindergarten. So we need to celebrate the fact that last fall was the first ever kindergarten assessment was given in the state of Oregon. Welcome, Dr. Oregonians. 33%. So first of all, celebrate. 30 seconds, celebrate the fact that we now have an Oregon State kindergarten assessment. 95% of kindergartners took this last fall. It is an amazing feat between the Early Learning Division and the Department of Education to be able to get that out to all schools. It was probably our first working together and the best. So if you look at that, what you will see is 33% of our kindergartners could name 5 or fewer letters. 14% 0 letters, and 37 could not identify any letter sounds. When it comes to math, they seem to be a little bit better, but what we see are the large racial and ethnic disparities. And when it comes to approaches to learning, again, what we want to look at is self-regulation that lead to academic success in 3rd grade and beyond. So what I'd really like to do is also go to the 3rd grade reading standards. So if you look at those are also not going to be any surprises to you as you look for that. And now what I would really like to do is go into the fact that we're going to talk about what the responsibilities are for the early learning hubs. We're getting to the investment we're on a comment.
And I'll take that one. So since a big part of our investment strategy is asking for investments to go through early learning hubs as the entities and communities that are best poised to make sure that your investments actually lead to outcomes, we wanted to make sure that everyone on the committee is clear about what hubs are responsible for. You can see their responsibilities here. Essentially, they're responsible for coordinating across all of the sectors that touch children in this kind of complex and disjointed system of early childhood services, and pointing them all toward a set of shared outcomes, which at the highest level are kindergarten readiness, stable and attached families, and of course coordinating that system. So important framing for everything we'll be talking about later. This is the delivery system we're building to leverage your investments to outcomes.
Can you explain, I mean, not explain, but the real value of the hubs is it's in the community.
That's
it's
exactly
ground level. We on high are going to say that we want these type of outcomes, but then the local people will be able to determine how they're going to come up with those outcomes. Would that be to say? Could you say that?
That's
so there
exactly
shouldn't be
right.
a pushback on necessarily on the tension between the bureaucracy of what I mean. I just want to say. I mean, I guess I want to sell the point to people outside of this room that this is they control the destiny, but this is what we want to have for outcomes.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
You, as the Early Learning Council, were very wise in recognizing that it's really the communities that understand what they best need.
Okay, that's what I'm
So you set very clear outcomes that they're responsible for and some guidelines about who needs to be involved. But we are allowing communities to drive the specific strategies as long as they put things forward that get to outcomes.
Right.
Pam, feel free to add anything there since you were the designer of it.
So if you look at our investment strategy, we're going to talk today about 2 key strategies that we'd like to see investment in. One is the investment in age 3 through grade 3 literacy agenda that focuses on quality care, support for the early learning providers and parents as key partners, and 2, investing in an infant toddler agenda that focuses on developmental screening, home visiting, and creating a broader array of services through an innovation fund.
Any comments on that, Ron?
I'll make sense of it. Is infant toddler a term of art? Is that what does infant toddler mean?
It's an age. It should be
What to
infant
what?
and toddler. So basically what that means is we're looking at kids birth to age 3.
That's right.
You'll hear wobblers, you'll hear all sorts of things that describe their developmental.
I don't see any marketing strategy here to, in my area we have home visits of every newborn 100% in one hospital, and in the other one it's not good to have the home visit. I mean, it's not treated as a real positive thing. So I mean, we need to, I don't want to use the word sell, but we need to have what the benefits is for the community as a whole, is this is a good idea, not intrusion, all this other conspiracy stuff. This is, so how do we market that? I don't see any marketing plan in here on how to sell this to this.
Would you want to consider a marketing plan as a moderate to substantial investment for us?
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, we need to be sure
Exactly.
to, I guess in the same thing I'm saying is just say the value. I think the value of what we're talking about is not necessarily always spoken. It's the professionals have this great idea, and the person that's in the community doesn't see what the value is, and they need to have that aha experience that there's a return on investment for early learning strategies. That's all. Maybe I'm talking to myself, but that's, I think a lot of people haven't had that aha experience.
And I was going to say, and I think that what the value that you bring to this committee is the fact that you're on the ground in that early learning hub, being a part of creating that, as well as on the council, and your work in the youth authority. So you know many of those investments to make. So let us go on to focus on the school readiness for 3-year-olds through kindergarten.
Okay, so as you can see, when we think about the early years to early grades part of our policy agenda, we're really focusing for 3, 4, and 5-year-olds on preparing them for kindergarten entry. And the 3 things that we would like you to consider investing in this area are investing in quality childcare settings. Quality is so important when you're thinking about children entering kindergarten prepared for school. And you can't talk about quality childcare settings without talking about investing in the early childhood workforce. And Jada will provide you with more details on that. We also would like to see investments in early literacy through early learning hubs, and investment in kindergarten transition through early learning hubs. As Dick pointed out, we think that the hubs are best poised as those people deeply embedded in their communities convening these sectors to direct these investments in a way that's accountable to outcomes. And one thing that I want to point out, as our team got together to think about investments in early literacy, investments in kindergarten transition, investments in quality, one thing that is really important to us in our thinking is how do we invest in a system that supports 3rd grade reading success ultimately. So not so much how do we invest in programs, but how do we invest in a way that's systematic and really builds those system supports for early literacy. The outcomes that we're striving for in this policy area are consistent across the board. When it comes to increasing quality, we actually have a quality improvement rating system that has been implemented in our state, and we need to increase the supply of programs that are rated at a high level on that system. And so increasing the supply of QRIS, quality rating improvement rated providers, is one outcome of these investments. And the other is improved performance on all of the domains across the kindergarten assessment: early literacy, early numeracy, and approaches to learning. Go ahead.
Quality rating improvement system, is that something that exists?
Yes, it's very new. Jada will provide you more details on it.
I don't want detail.
And it does exist.
And it's a unique thing to Oregon, or?
No, actually, it's part of a national movement to think about childcare as an education setting, not simply a work support for families, but a place where our children spend significant time, and so there needs to be education happening in those settings.
Is it complicated to use this system? I mean, is it a big new regulatory scheme, or is it what's involved with that for?
Ron.
If you pull out the card, Ron, that we have there, it's kind of a small way to look at this, but it is complicated in the fact that you have early learning providers taking care of kids from 6 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock at night. We're asking them to go to school. When you think about higher ed and you listen to what Hilda talked about how difficult it was to get our K-12 teachers further education, think about how we're going to be able to do this. And the new full-day kindergarten coming into play in 2015, what you'll find is if they need 800 to 1,000 new kindergarten teachers, they're going to wipe out our highly educated early learning workforce that we're trying to build up to get to. Because even if they take 400 from us, that's going to take away our most highly educated.
But does this require, a staff, an agency, a
Yes,
budget? And
yes,
what
it
is
does.
this- What
It's
is
a-
doing this require?
So what this is we probably would not even be here talking to you had we not gotten the Race to the Top grant. What that did is that provided $30 million of federal investment into the state of Oregon's redesign. What the quality rating system is designed to do is work with those, if you look at what you have at level 1 and level 2, our licensure, which is a typical system that's happened in the state of Oregon forever. It licenses for health, safety, and business practices for those that are taking care of children that are during the workday. What you look at, similar to that of a restaurant or a hotel, is that there are certain elements as you look at that card that talk about what would be a 3, 4, or 5-star environment.
That's Lynn calling to question you. But
She can get this next week. What that means is that we're asking people to have coaches come into their home. It's very similar if you look to the K-12 system in terms of coaches going into classrooms to be able to work with those teachers. However, those are in schools and in classrooms. We're going to individual homes, to centers, to Head Start to be able to work with them on the ground in coaching. At the same time, they have a portfolio they need to complete. And in that portfolio, they talk about their business practices, they talk about the education of the staff that work for them, and what do they need to do and what are their goals to future. So it is a complicated system. It's one that the federal government put into play to try to get quality into the homes and the centers that most of the kids across the nation attend.
Okay.
We often talk about Head Start. That's less than 10% of the kids in the state of Oregon that receive those services. So we have to go find kids. This is a beginning system,
Well,
so
excuse me, what about the undesired outcomes? Shouldn't the desired outcome be that the public endorses what we're about some way or other? I mean, a desired outcome would be that everyone sees the value of what we're talking about. Is that a...
and that's actually where your public and your engagement plan and your communication plan come into play. Because one of the things that you will see is you'll see hopefully very soon is a 3-star or a 4-star or a 5-star in the window of these providers. So even as a parent, when you drive up, you'll know the kinds of things because those are on the cards that they'll see. So if I want a 3-star, that's what I'll find, 4-star or 5-star.
But I think that, Dick, what I was thinking about when you were talking earlier about the marketing strategy, to me it's an overall, for lack of a better word to say it, PR strategy.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
part of what this is about is a culture change, not just among these providers, but about all of us in terms of thinking about what that early period is, what our role is in supporting kids during that early period, how we help them, how we think about this as a part of our education. And positive development for kids, not just a place where we put them while we go to work, so we don't have to worry about it, right? So we all have to think about it differently, whether we want to invest in a, for lack of a better way to say, a PR campaign as a way to do that, I don't know, but this is a significant shift in how we've been historically in the state thinking about kids.
Well, there's never been a bond issue passed unless you build a case and why it's good for the community. So I say the same thing.
And the reason it's good is because oftentimes when you look for childcare for your children, it may be that your neighbor is there and available, or you may hear about that from someone else, but we never go in and say, are you going to do this during the day? And how is that going to make sure that my child is ready for kindergarten? So we actually have to change the way parents think. We don't want them to go to say, where is the cheapest childcare? What we really want to be able to do is we want them to be able to go say, I want a quality environment. And then as the state, what we need to do is invest in those families who can't afford to pay that and make sure that they also have access to that quality environment at the same time. And some of those tools are called the child care subsidy. The child care subsidy is another federal grant that comes from the federal government, and it basically is called the ERDC. So it's a subsidy to working families. What we've often looked for is more availability of subsidy. What we also have to look at is not only investing in that subsidy, but also making sure that when they have that subsidy, that they're going someplace and spending their days in a quality environment. In order to do that, we also have to make a state investment in the workforce. The workforce, again, are oftentimes many of those families who may not speak English, that may not have finished their high school education, or they may be halfway along that point. So what we have to do is we have to work with, and I'm really looking forward to working with the Higher Education Commission to help us figure out a way to have a statewide system for providers to be able to not only get professional development in the day-to-day work, but that they can get those associate degrees and those other degrees that can put them on the pathway to being those teachers for children birth to 6. We need to help support them with scholarships. We need to help them probably with navigators, because it's a very intimidating system for someone who has not been involved with the higher ed system to do that. So as we talk about that, that's one of our commitments to the 40-40-20 for the Oregon Education Investment Board, is that we want to make sure that we raise the number of 2- and 4-year degrees with our workforce so that we can also provide that quality. You heard about me talking about the 800 to 1,000 kindergarten teachers needed, so I think what we need to do is this part, right? Yep. You've succeeded in getting our presentation down to about 2/3 of the original one, Ron, so there you go.
Good job, Ron.
So much like the medical field, we need to work on prevention versus the expensive treatment. And that's one of the things that we often do in early learning, is we will go and identify those kids who need special needs, so they have developmental delays. All those programs, Head Start, poverty, those are all high-cost programs. Oftentimes you will hear that Oregon's early learning system is the most expensive in the nation, and what we have done is we have invested in those kids most in need, in terms of there are as many state slots for Oregon pre-kindergarten as there are from the federal government to address those kids most in poverty. I'm not saying anything about that other than the fact that that's a very expensive investment to do, and should we not look at a continuum of services available to families, and not only the most expensive programs that we can look at. Quality care is one that we want to be able to do and mitigate those experiences before they enter kindergarten. It's that sensitive time, and we have to look again at those quality environments. So next week we will show a short video to the council that talks about what a 1-star would look like for a child walking in the door versus a 5-star, and you will see the difference in terms of, in there is the child walks into the 1-star, they're in front of the TV, nobody pays attention to them, they are essentially taking care of themselves all day long in a group of kids. If you watch the 5-star that we see for Oregon, they'll walk in, they're engaged from the time they walk in the door till the time they go home, and they probably will go home with things to do, because that way they can connect with their families as well. So the state is buying the ability to sustain that quality in those early learning transformation. They're buying a high quality workforce by incentivizing the educator professional development that's flexible and meets our needs. And we will add to that 40-40-20 in terms of being able to figure out how our providers can also be that. We will also buy and invest as a state in more children in quality environments, more children ready for kindergarten. And in some ways, whether it's a modest, medium, or substantial investment, it's a matter of scale of how we want to begin this in this next biennium. There is no compulsory attendance like in K-12, no districts, and no new funds, and no net increases in children in quality centers. I want to talk to you about one of the vehicles that we are suggesting that you support for the continuation is since 2004 there has been a child care contribution tax credit in the state of Oregon. It's provided funding for child care quality initiatives, and its original intent was to increase the quality of child care environments. It was also to improve compensation for child care providers, and it was to reduce low-income working families' share of the cost of child care expenses. It has a sunset in 2015, and it had a cap originally of $500,000. If you look at what we have, is we have a race to the top that we've set the system up, and it's going to be completing its round in 2016, so right in the middle of the biennium. As you look at this tax credit, what we find is this is something that both businesses and people have supported to $500,000. In fact, we've actually sent back contributions to be able to do that. There are people who would love to contribute more to this tax credit. So that is a legislative concept that's been submitted, and we would like to talk to you more about that because we want to make sure that those continued investments in our workforce and quality happen there. We also have from the federal government increased federal laws that are coming. They are going to determine what kind of monitoring happens when you give a child care subsidy to a family. So Oregon has had a more liberal approach in terms of giving subsidy out to people. We have not had them licensed, or actually all they do is register at this point, and yet the subsidy goes. The federal government is going to say you need to do increased quality investment in those programs where you give subsidy to the state of Oregon. So at that point, those will be policy addressed too. And Megan's going to talk a lot about the literacy and kindergarten transitions.
Or maybe I'll talk a little and let you guys ask me questions in
Yeah.
the interest of time. Just as we thought about investing in quality care and education settings and investing in our workforce as the first part of our early years to early grades strategy, we've also put significant thought into the kinds of investments that we need to make into communities through hubs in order to reach parents, families, community-based providers, and engage them as our partners in our work to increase early literacy, the early side of early literacy, building that foundation for reading, and to involve them in the very important work that is just beginning in our state to connect early childhood education to the K-12 system. These are two systems that have historically been pretty disconnected from each other. When I go out into communities, I hear stories about, we're so excited, we're talking to childcare providers in our community for the first time. And that is exciting, but it's also a little bit scary that a kindergarten teacher would have maybe never talked to the early childhood provider in their community before. And so in the next biennium, we would like to see an investment in early literacy through the hubs as a way to reach our most at-risk populations at scale. And we'd also like to see an investment in kindergarten transition P3 partnership activities so that early childhood education and the K3 system are much better aligned, so that transitions are smoother for children, and so that what kids are learning in preschool is actually positioning them for success upon kindergarten entry. And we think these are two investments that are just absolutely critical for the kind of connected and aligned system that we're trying to build in early childhood education. Yeah, Whitney.
So last time we heard from Karen Twain and Rob Saxton, and unfortunately Ron and Pam were absent, but he presented a plan. Oh, right, sorry.
That's good.
In the plan he presented for early literacy and K-3 reading, it included a transition component. Is this a place where this investment strategy is part of that investment strategy?
To be honest, I think we still need to work out those details, but I will say it's critical. Wherever the investment comes from, I think it's critical that we invest in pre-K through third grade alignment activities, both at the child and family level and at the early childhood provider and the kindergarten teacher level. And in our opinion, the place to make that investment is through the hubs, because they're the coordinating entity that knows the early childhood providers in their community and is also statutorily required to be connected to schools.
Yeah,
so the details of that,
I think the committee needs to have some conversation about this. I think critical, like Megan just said, there is not a place for early childhood systems building. We're trying to put that in place through the hubs in terms of a coordinating mechanism. But if we really want to connect kindergarten transition, there are at least three parts of that equation. And that's part of why I asked Karen from the phone, the question I asked her last week, if we just expect that to happen through the K-12 system, quite frankly, it's not going to happen. So if we decide to send resources through K-12, we decide we want to do this first of all, and we send it through the K-12 system, we've got to figure out what the incentive or the mechanism is that the other two legs of that stool are present, or conversely, if we decide we want to do it and we send it through the hubs, then what's the requirement, incentive, what have you, accountability that K-12 is part, right?
And to be absolutely clear, at an agency level, we are on the same page about the importance of this investment, and who holds the money is kind of not the point here. It's how does it get, what is the system it's delivered through, so that it reaches the families, the kids, and the providers and teachers that it needs to. And actually, we invited Karen to come and just say a little bit about why we think it's so important that we weave these policy areas together, and kind of our vision for what that could look like is your thinking as a committee about how these investments should be made. So Karen, why don't you go ahead?
Sure. So, just historically, you should know, I've been in the K-12 system for 30 years, and so my real big first introduction to early learning was starting in February when I started to work for the state. And I'm telling everybody I've been on a high learning curve, and that is true. But a couple things that have happened to me in the last few months. Last week I was in Minnesota for the Center on Enhanced Early Learning Outcomes. And a little over a month ago, I went with the Race to the Top team to Washington, D.C. And you should know that as much as we talk as a nation about the 3-to-3 efforts or the birth to third grade efforts, we're one of the few states really, really having the conversation. So when I went to those two places, I think I was the only or one of the only people from the K-12 system. And that's very different than talking about how it should be and actually doing it. So it's been clear that we're all trying to reach the same benchmark, which is to get to that third grade literacy. And then eventually 40-40-20. If we don't get the kids reading, 40-40-20 just isn't going to happen. So, the hubs, as we've spoken, are the natural place because you have the right people at the table. You have K-12, and you have early learning, you have community. The three components, and this kind of addresses what Whitney asked. Jada's been talking about a warm summer handoff. I'd like to call it the hot summer handoff, where what we really need, the problem is as a K-12 teacher or administrator, is you don't know who these kids are. And we need to have the efforts from early learning we've got to bridge that. And early identification of who these kids are is huge. That way we don't take them on the first day and go from there. It needs to start well before that, not only with the early learning efforts, but literally to know who the kids are. They're giving them some nice introduction to literacy, and then we need to pick the baton up and go with it. So this is really critical to the K-3 efforts to, have that connection. This effort does need to be focused on literacy, and it needs to have it's really about equity. So our kids of color, the kids coming in, we've got to know who these kids are. And we can't do it in isolation. Honestly, if we tilted everything towards early learning, we wouldn't get it done. And if we tilted everything to K-3, we wouldn't get it done. So if early learning can do the types of things that they are talking about, then what's going to happen is with kids getting full day kindergarten in 2015, those kids will get a full rich program just like they've had in their preschools. And then on up from there, we can't just drop it then at the end of kindergarten. It's got to go 1, 2, 3. So I know that's really obvious, but I can't say it enough because we can't keep doing the same old thing, and that's what we have been doing. And our data is just flat. So this is just.
Well, when do we talk about the whole package, though? The health, the family unit, jobs, the whole economic base as well. I mean, the whole package of.
Next.
Yeah, and Whitney, I just want to say in answer to your question, a part of our package that we presented a couple weeks ago, the funding that we'll be asking for, includes that summer handoff. We've got that in order to get the money, in order to get the money in the hands of community-based organizations so that we can work with them to bring those kids right into kindergarten. And that will happen in that summer before.
Well, and so committee members, just quickly, I just want to lose this. I think we need to have some conversation about how we, and however we set this up, encourage all of that to happen. I mean, sort of my thinking is if we want to drive something in K-12, we ought to send it to the Department of Education. If we want to drive something in community change around early learning, we need to drive it through the hubs. But that's just one way to think about it. But it can't happen in isolation.
Right.
I think you need to set a strong expectation for us, regardless of where the investment goes, that there is strong agency level collaboration, so that it is we're modeling exactly what we want to see at the hub tables.
I just
and
came
the
back
rack
from
tables.
Indonesia, and we don't want it to look like this.
Exactly. Speaking of, I think this is an appropriate moment to transit. So basically,
Well, I
investments
want to
through
move
hubs.
because Ron's got about 3 meetings here
Yep.
all at once, and he's going to be leaving at about 1:45.
Yes.
So I want to be sure that he gets this too.
So we'll transition now to talking about the family stability piece, which is where we really focus efforts in birth to 3. And so Jada, go for it.
Actually, we had some research. I'm not going to tell you about that, Ron, but you can ask me about it later. This is where we focus moving to the birth to 3 and the families and the
Is that a
jobs.
picture of Ron's brain?
It is. It could be.
Somebody's.
It could
Ron's
be.
brain on 3 meetings.
If he was very, very young. So what we really want to do is focus and move to the connection, the strong connection with healthcare. They are a substantial player in that birth to 3 area, like we talked about. And it's the most ripe opportunity for cross-agency and crossover leverage to be able to look at that. The CCOs are our partners in that birth to 3 space. So what I'd really like to do is ask Dana to talk about the health role in early learning so that we understand that, and then we will get to that investment.
Hi, good morning. I was checking the time. I don't even know what time of day it is. Sorry, I was late tonight. So Dana Harganani, I'm the Child Health Director for the Oregon Health Authority. I'm pleased to be here. And I serve on the Early Learning Council and as well as work very closely with the Early Learning Division and work on Jada's cabinet. So I'm pleased to be here. We're going to get to, in a few minutes, some of the research and evidence behind the critical importance of the earliest years. So there is a tremendous amount of research that shows that the brain development and other organ development from early conception to the first several years are critical for the long-term outcomes, both health and education. So generally, I think most people, when they think of the health system, kind of end up thinking pretty specifically around well-child visits or immunizations. And so what I'm trying to target in this slide is just to describe really what the depth of health's role is in early learning. This is not an exhaustive list, but hopefully it gives a little depth to understanding beyond just the idea of visit or health insurance. So healthcare system, healthcare providers, obviously predominantly primary care providers, home visitors, et cetera, are really critical for monitoring developmental progression. We see kids every 2 months in the first year of life and every 3 months in the second year of life. There are a lot of touch points. And we know across even our highest risk populations, there is a really good touch point with the healthcare system, even in those hard to risk families. So monitoring physical development, language, social emotional development are critical to those earlier years in the health system. Healthcare system is also really critical for looking to see if a child is thriving in a safe and nurturing environment. That is a key part from everything from mandatory reporting when a concern is present, but really to promote healthy attachment and relationships between families and parenting skills. Of course, early identification of risk to health or development through early screening as an example. Referral and coordination of care, and that would include coordination across systems, especially for early childhood providers across systems inclusive of early learning. We are frequently seen as a trusted source of resource, or of trusted information resource. And I think it's critical to acknowledge that, but also to ensure that the health system has the best information to pass on. So when I get asked about where should I send my child to childcare, we need to make sure that the healthcare system is equipped to know what QRIS is and how to direct families to the highest quality early learning. I think also the health system provides an important concept to acknowledge that it's really the health of the family that is critical to that child's early learning. So the physical, but predominantly the mental health of the family, the mother too, that supports the secure attachments in that early childhood are critical to our education outcomes. The opportunity with our CCO model, our coordinated care model of care for delivering health services in Oregon has really provided a tremendous opportunity to support that coordination. And we're looking to do that at a state level and to support those communities through our hubs and CCOs to coordinate together at the local level to achieve our common goals around health and education. And we are just now creating an early childhood team that sits on the health agency that is organized to explicitly connect directly with the early learning system and our health system transformation to support those efforts. So giving just an example of what our goals are around investments in that birth to three category.
All this is birth. Where's the prenatal piece?
Well, I think that's a good factor. I think the reason we put birth to three up here is...
The reason I say this is that 1,000 days that I learned from Pam's mountain on high up there, that if there's good health in 1,000 days, conception, 700 days after birth is pretty significant to where the kid's going to be at 3rd grade.
Yeah, actually, I think the evidence is very clear in that, and we can talk about how we best share the language behind this. And I think you're absolutely right. Our intention is to be inclusive, including the prenatal period. Absolutely. I mean, especially when we're talking about aligning and coordinating across health and early learning. I mean, clearly health has a significant role in touching in those prenatal areas as well as home visiting.
And again, the public relations part or whatever, the return on investment there, that's low-hanging fruit. Right. And there's not that much cost per se if we're, but the return of the investment of that healthy host, or the female and the birth, of course, is very, very significant.
Absolutely. Well, the first thing up here in terms of where we'd like to target investments actually gets to that point. So early screening to identify risks to our to child development and early attachment are critical, and we see that happening from the prenatal period on forward. Is definitely one of the areas. We've put some emphasis on developmental screening. We know that's not the only area of screening, and we like to bolster that through this investment. Increasing local capacity specifically around supporting social emotional development in those earliest years are a big piece of this. So when risk is identified, that local communities have the capacity to support and put in place evidence-based programs that can support that early development. Home visiting is a key strategy in those earliest years. It's not the only one, but it's an important one. We know that we have more work to do to make sure that is well coordinated both at the state level and at the health level, with the goal that we are identifying those children and their families that may have risks that could best be served through a home visiting strategy. And I think to your point earlier, making sure that that's accepted from the public and recognized as a critical vehicle to getting to social emotional development. And then finally, of course, a really critical important piece is to focus on the equity aspect of this. So identifying opportunities earlier to address and wrap around resources that are culturally relevant to get to some of the disproportionality that we see, for example, in the child welfare system is inherent to all of this work.
Can I ask a quick question just to check thinking? So this investment for this strategy would be an investment that would be delivered through the hubs in coordination with CCOs. Is that would be the sort of
an answer I can build on?
Go ahead. Well, I was going to say, I think that is the intent, and again, probably back to the prior conversation, the exact model for how that has to happen. I think we can be strategic about thinking about the goal is coordination and supporting capacity building. I think CCOs and hubs play a critical role in doing that at the local level, but the details of how that happens, I don't know if you want to add.
And so never before has there been an investment by the state in this. And so what we're really saying is that we're ready to look at a mix of a reallocation. So in other words, like we've done in early learning and the redesign from the commission system to the early learning hubs, we want to do the same thing in the birth to 3 area. We want to work very closely with public health, with other home visiting programs to be able to align that system to reduce duplication and to align with our health partners. And that will happen again through the hubs. So there may need to be some investment to be able to look at that, but we're also looking at reallocating the current funds that we have both in health and in home visiting to make sure we address that.
The challenge is going to be everybody playing in the same sandbox.
Yes.
And if I could just draw the committee's attention to that second bullet. This is a really important point and something that we've frankly been struggling with as an early learning division and Oregon Health Authority team. In our state, unless you are a child that requires the most intensive level of intervention, or a family that requires the most intensive level of intervention, we don't have a robust service array to support infant and toddler social and emotional development. And so when we talk about increasing that service capacity through early learning hubs and CCOs, there's a real need for some seed funding for innovation in our state in that area. Because unless you need the most help, we don't have a lot for you.
So what does that mean you're asking for? And it's an odd discussion to me to have an investment discussion that has no numbers in it anywhere.
Yeah, I know.
I know, and it's really confusing, but that's how we've asked them to proceed at
I
this
know,
point.
so what are you going to ask for that helps you accomplish the second one?
So I think some kind of, just like we had a kindergarten partnership innovation fund, some kind of innovation fund, some kind of seed funding to spark that local thinking about what would be some innovative support models to support infant toddler social emotional development through the hubs.
And when are we going to get specific, though?
You have to talk to Whitney about specifics.
Well, I mean, that's a good question, but in terms of.
I mean, you can't put this in a budget. This is
Right,
a nice
exactly.
discussion, but it can't be in a budget.
Right.
So I think the recommendations that you'll make will help the governor to be able to put the specific budget together. I mean, the nuts and bolts of it aren't going to come to you. I mean, we're not requiring you to do budget analyst work, but what you will be able to do is look at these various strategies that have been brought before you and identify where you think there's priority, where it's high priority, where you think there's more work to be done. You can.
But do we get the opportunity to drill it down a bit? I mean, I think that's kind of, I'm driving.
Yeah, I don't think I bought anything without really knowing what the price was.
Right.
Well, I mean, that's right. I mean, you could come with a slide that says, let's end child hunger. Great, we're all in favor of it. So what do you want to do next? How much money are you going to spend? What program are you going to do? How are we going to go about it?
I think we can get. A lot more granular when we're down in our work session to be, getting a little closer to something that you can wrap your mind around.
Okay, these just all seem like, are you in favor of good things? Yeah, I'm in favor of good things. A lot better than bad things.
But you're gonna have to make some really hard choices as between good things. I mean, I think that's the hard part.
You can't do that without some context. If each of these
Right.
costs $1 billion, we can't talk about, pick 3 of them.
Right.
If they each cost $1,000, we can say, yeah, let's go for all of them.
Right.
And then with the ROI of spending that 1,000 or the 3 million.
Right.
So in interest of you having another meeting, we'd like to end our presentation and say that basically what we want are the 2 major investments, one in birth 3 to be able to look at coordinating the system, and again, looking at that innovation fund that would go to communities to more closely align. Also some statewide direction in terms of how to more closely work together.
Well, I
all
really
benefiting kindergarten readiness.
Yeah, I really appreciate the input. And Pam, I need to say thank you for your leadership, and also Lynn Saxon too, for developing this, because this is, I think, to the whole state of Oregon, it's an aha value of the early learning piece. I mean, obviously we want success at the end of the day at the 20, but the early learning is a big friggin' deal. And it's the biggest bang for your buck too. There's no question about it. Yes, Pam?
I just want to, while we're on this, so I don't lose it when we get to the work session, just a couple of things that I've been thinking about related to this. I mean, it occurs to me as we think about the entire continuum that in some ways early learning has as much more in common with higher education in terms of how we make investments than it does with K-12. Even though we don't touch it at all in a substantive way from early learning to higher ed, but it's a market-driven system, just like higher ed is a market-driven system. There isn't a place where all kids come through unless they touch healthcare, but that's not really early learning, right? There's an overlap, but not really. So as we think about our investments, I think we have to think about sort of those leverage points differently. I actually think that's one of the big issues of equity in early learning as I think about it, is that because it's a market system, those who have money in the market can go get quality, which is part of this whole thing about QRAS, but those who are the highest risk really can't.
What you just touched on is OIA, DHS, and DOC, which is only $2 billion. So, you know, so if
Right.
we do a good job, just what you just outlined, we're gonna get a one heck of an ROI. And I don't understand why we're,
But I guess I'm also, yes, and I'm suggesting that as we think about investments or making investments and how you do that, how you invest in K-12 where you have schools and infrastructure and all of those kinds of things is different than how we incentivize what we're looking for in early education or in higher education. I'm not finished thinking about it yet, but I just wanted to plant that seed before we get there. The other thing I wanted to say on early learning specifically is, you know, I've been saying at this committee, and since this is now I chair the Early Learning Council, I'm going to use early learning as an example because I think it's right for this. I've been saying on this committee, and I really am a big believer, that nobody's ever going to dump enough money in our state that will accomplish everything that we need to do, right? So we have to think about how we do things differently. I mean, I'm among the top advocates in this state for additional investment in early learning, but not if we just add it and we don't think about doing things differently. And so 2 points from the presentation today where I think we have to seriously think about not just adding investment, but substantively doing it differently. QRIS being one of them. It was one of your points that you made, Ron. We have a child care workforce from the state out there licensing programs, and we invest in research and referral organizations, but none of them are organized to do this quality work. They're organized to do something different. So it's about doing it differently, and it's about investment. And home visiting is another example. We have way too many home visiting programs, and they're driven by program and funding silos. They're not driven by what the needs of the child and families in the way that Dana described it. So I think if we're going to invest in these things that the early learning folks are asking us to, the quid pro quo has to be doing it differently, not doing it additively. So because I harp that every place else, I want to use my own.
good,
Completely agree.
So.
thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll go to the public comment. On the public testimony, I'm the good cop, Seth is the bad cop. And we're going to go 3 minutes because this is ironic because I'm going to go into a re-entry meeting in 90 minutes, which is what we're going to put out of business, right? We're not going to have judicial problems at the Department of Corrections. So Dave Porter is the first person up.
One each. I'm Dave Porter. I just live in Southeast Portland. I'm a dual language immersion advocate and a study abroad. And I tried to send this information to you electronically, and I will try again because the graphs will come out in color and
Sure.
be more informative. And I tried to put together, I think we're living in a different world for our kids going forward in terms of the international economy, and we need to strengthen foreign language programs as we are STEM programs. So the two proposals, one is my top priority if we are thinking about the strategic economic future, that is more Mandarin immersion programs and high school study abroad in China program. The other one is dual language immersion, but it's more the equity. You did in the last biennium fund some startup of Spanish dual language immersion programs. You also did a Vietnamese and beyond the kindergarten. I couldn't see it was in your materials that you were thinking about doing it again. You should. I've outlined that there are 11 school districts that have more than 1,000 Hispanic students and have no dual language Spanish program, and within those districts are 15 schools that are majority Hispanic that are not dual language immersion programs. And so the other one is, and I didn't put any dollar amounts on that, however you funded it this time would work again. I did on the startup of the Mandarin immersion, I said let's do 4 of them over the biennium at $100,000 each. I said over the biennium let's send 10 high school students to China each year at $10,000 a year. There's currently a proposal before Portland Public Schools that is less than that, to send 3 to China. We're trying to work out with the Board of Education the issue of whether if a school district sends a student abroad, whether they get reimbursed by the state school fund per the ADM. That kid, even though they're abroad and they've been sent, could count for ADM. So if you have any influence with, I think the statutes are vague. I think the board could do that. If you have any influence with them, they'll be hearing it, I hope, next week at their June board meeting. Thanks.
Good. Thank you very much. Jim Anderson?
Yeah, thank you for bringing up jobs. Dr. King said that trying to fight poverty, to coordinate all the different pieces that are a problem is just overwhelming. All that really needs to be done is that people are able to earn a living, and most of these will go away. But getting back to the matter at hand, I'm an old manager of quality control systems. And in my sunset years, I've done about 10 years of tutoring kids at King's School. And the thing that really I see is the zone of proximate development, or teaching kids at the level at which they are. And our curriculums don't take that into account very well. I've tutored, especially with kindergarten kids. You see them, I'm supposed to tutor them at the curriculum level, and the rebellion is just so obvious in kindergarten. I mean, just silence or else rebellion is just so positive. And then you go down to their and try to educate them in their zone of proximate development, and they're immediately loving and hugging you and wanting to be the teacher for a while. The difference is so striking. And I see it so much in, a lot in kindergarten. The kids aren't learning the letters, they're learning to echo the kids that know the letters. I mean, they aren't even looking at the letters. They're saying A, C. I mean, they get very high skills at imitation and memorizing. They hear on the computer the words read, and then they can repeat it exactly. But when you ask them, well, what is this word? They have no idea what it is. But they're mimicking exactly. And it's all because they aren't being taught at their level, and they need to I feel they need to be successful. You know, this constant being unsuccessful, being taught at a grade level that they're not able to reach, it's just overwhelming for them. Being told they're unsuccessful every day, day after day, year after year, psychologically, I can't see how they can stand it even.
Hey, Jim, that's 3 minutes. Thank you very much.
You bet.
I know you testified before. You have the best male handwriting that I know of anybody in the state of Oregon. I mean, look at that.
Pretty good.
Pretty good. Okay. Dr. Pope.
It won't be long before you don't want to see how a man in this society is built into our system, not to see each other that often. So you're going to be seeing me everywhere you go. Because I'm looking for a code, C-O-D-E. Who has the code to break what is happening to the black youth? A code we can break to educate them, because we're not doing it. I don't know whether it's a mindset, but you are talking the language, but can we do it? It's a code. It needs to be broken. You don't want to talk about it, they don't want to talk about it. Nobody wants to talk about it, but I do. You don't talk about it. A few years ago, it's been a long time, there was a code to be broken between the Soviet Union and America. We want to break the code. There's something need to be broken to educate the black youth in this country. Over 400 years in this nation. I came here, you educate me, my children, yeah, but black Americans. So that's why I'm going to be following you everywhere you go, because I want to listen to what you're saying. It's not funny. I want to listen to what you have to say, because we are blessed with this man here, the governor of the state. He's seen enough of it. He came up with this idea. But how we do it? We do it to get a result. I'm into hands-on. That's what I do with these kids. I'm there. I've got to see them working, not in the prison. So I'm going to be listening to you. I want to be hearing what you say. The only thing I'm not going to be able to do, if you pass Salem, I can't go there. But if you're in Salem and here, I'll be there. I want to listen to what you're saying. Maybe you have the code. I don't know. There is a code that needs to be broken. We will do it together.
Thank you very much. Hey, Rex, holder, is that?
Burkholder.
Burkholder?
I have bad male handwriting.
No, you have lousy handwriting. Actually, you don't. I do.
That's why I type. Rex Burkholder. I'm currently on the board of Friends Outdoor School and helping a statewide effort to expand conservation and place-based education, which Outdoor School is a great example of. And so the first letter here, I'm just going to summarize it, is that my interest here is I want to have citizens that can cope with the problems that we're going to face in the future. And the major problems that are facing our society are going to be around environmental issues. Soil depletion, climate change, water quality. There's a list here at the bottom of 12 that are identified by Jared Diamond, who wrote the book Collapse. Okay, scary stuff, but Outdoor School and conservation education gives the kids the knowledge and skills and understand to be able to address those in an intelligent way. I also quote a fellow named Neil deGrasse Tyson here. This is from a program he was on with Bill Moyers, who said, you have not fully expressed your powers as a voter until you have a scientific literacy in topics that matter for future political issues. When we talk about technique in education, and I'm an ex-science teacher from many years ago, if it's abstract and removed from our daily life and the place we live in, people do not gain either the understanding or the compassion and care for that community and that they live in. And that community includes that natural world, the resources we depend on, water, air, timber, farm products. And that's what Outdoor School and place-based education gives our kids. Less than half of Oregonian children get any outdoor school today, and many of those programs are now 2 or 3 days, not the full week program that used to be universal, where all our kids got the same basic knowledge about what goes on in the world. So that's what I'm here for, is saying here's a goal that we should have, is literate citizens that are environmentally literate, and that's part of a larger program. This is a state-sanctioned, approved by the legislature information. Tracy Price was not able to come here today. I'm going to hand it to you to pass down. There's an environmental literacy plan that looks at how do we coordinate the work that's being done by all the agencies in this area, our conservation education programs, with the educational outcomes of the state. That kind of goes into the detail there. Tracy put that together here. This is a broader description of the environmental literacy plan. So I'm just sharing that with you, showing that there is this connection, very deep connection between careers, behavior, performance in school, with getting kids out and into nature, whether at any age, and then Outdoor School being the key piece of that. I'm also here, and I'm just going to stop and turn it over to Dan Prince, who is the head of the MESD's Outdoor School program, who's going to tell you what Outdoor School is. If you haven't been there for a while, it's a pretty exciting program, and kids really get engaged and with each other and with the natural world, and that's why I'm so passionate about it, and would encourage you guys to consider thinking about how do we actually fund this program again at the statewide level. Thanks very much.
Yeah. Thank you, Rex. Dan, you want to identify yourself and
Hi, everybody. Dan Prince, I'm the coordinator of outdoor school at MESD. I also live out in Corbett, very east Multnomah County. Thank you all for the
MESD is
Multnomah Education Service District. Yes. Thanks for your service to youth. As a parent, I really appreciate it. And thanks for the opportunity to speak today. I live in Corbett. I'm the coordinator of Outdoor School. Outdoor School is, as you probably know, it's a residential science experience for 6th grade students. This program also has a high school leadership component, there you go, in which high schoolers teach science lessons and lead living groups of students under the guidance and support of Outdoor School staff. I'm excited for the role Outdoor School is playing in helping OEIB attain its goals for prepared students for a prosperous Oregon. I'd like to take just a couple minutes to share how I see this happening and where we'll need some help to reach our full potential. First, to educational equity. MESD's model for participation helps ensure equitable opportunities for students to access this often transformative learning experience. Multnomah County school districts and others around the state participate at the district level with all classrooms in all schools attending outdoor school at 6th grade. It provides that opportunity for every student. Unfortunately, due to limited financial resources, all districts do not participate for the same length of time. Rex mentioned that. And some cannot participate at all. Sustainable funding can help even up access, helping to restore a full week level of programming for the state. Second, to educator outcomes, Outdoor School is the beginning of a pipeline to a teaching career for many of our high school student leaders. Outdoor School has worked hard to recruit a diverse core of high school students. The most recent data indicate that the race and ethnicity of the high school student volunteer population matches that of Multnomah County as a whole. That's the data we have. Not only do we anticipate this will help increase the number of non-white, Hispanic, or non-native English educators, but it also provides 6th grade students with inspiring and diverse role models who demonstrate a love for learning and a love for science. Third, to STEM outcomes. Last month's STEM Summit in Eugene called out the incredible multi-sector participation in efforts to improve STEM learning in Oregon. Outdoor Schools provided hands-on science education within the context of nature for over 50 years in Oregon. One great aspect of learning science in nature is that nature provides unscripted and unexpected experiences. Surprises drive curiosity. Curiosity generates inquiry. Inquiry is the engine of authentic science. I'm thrilled to engage in this conversation about how Outdoor School continue to support a future of prosperous Oregon and how it may restore Outdoor School statewide. And thanks for the time, I appreciate it. And thanks, Mark, for the great event in Eugene. It's incredible.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Dana Hepper, did I pronounce it right?
You did, Dana Hepper, good job. I am the Early Learning Director at Children's Institute. And Children's Institute is very supportive of the state's 40-40-20 goal. And the research the research that you've named and many others in the room today, points us to know that what we provide to kids prenatal to age 8 directly impacts graduation from high school and college attainment and a number of other health and well-being life indicators down the road. And I think Jod already pointed out, by 9 months we see disparities already that we can measure in cognitive development, social development, behavior, and health. Very concretely, what we see as critical opportunities for Oregon in 2015 are to one, do better at getting more kids ready for kindergarten by increasing the access to high quality early learning. We have programs in Oregon that we know work already to increase kindergarten readiness, and yet way too few children access them. So 50% of kids in Oregon when they're born qualify for Medicaid, the 200% federal poverty level, but only 27% of kids in Oregon will touch an early learning program by the time they're in kindergarten. So we just aren't getting to the kids that we need to get to. So we do think there's an opportunity as we build the system to continue to invest in quality and get more kids served simultaneously. If we wait, there's no way we're getting to 40-40-20, not by 2025, but even beyond. The second thing that we see as really important is to leverage the investments in early learning by creating that smooth, seamless transition from early learning to kindergarten through 1st through 3rd grade. So this looks like aligning standards, shared professional development, creating a smooth experience for kids and families. And the legislature has made the 1-year investment in the Kindergarten Partnership and Innovation Fund. And the reality is, I think we'll find, I mean, one, we had $4 million to spend and there were $10 million in requests, and that was the first year of a RFP that went out and was due during spring break. So I think that's a pretty compelling demonstration of the need. But two, I think it will find it takes longer than 1 year to shift culture in K-12 and early learning so that it becomes embedded as a regular part of their work to collaborate. And it takes longer than 1 year to build those deep relationships that spur that ongoing collaboration. So we'd like to see some kind of investment in that linkage continue to happen moving forward. So we invest in early learning, we smooth it out so we see those early learning gains through kindergarten. And then the third key opportunity I want to highlight is we're moving to full day kindergarten. And simultaneous to doing that, Oregon has a very significant chronic absence problem that is most significant in kindergarten. And so we can move to full day, and yet if we have 25% of the kids missing 10% of the days or more, we're not going to see that investment leverage the way that we want to. I don't know, we haven't had conversations about whether that is, a new investment or a dollar allocation, or whether that's just there's an opportunity to weave a focus on chronic absence into the work to roll out full day kindergarten, K-3 RTI, that kind of thing. But we are seeing it as an emerging critical opportunity to make sure that move to full day kindergarten really fruits the way that it should. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other input, since you're not the last two here?
No, what do you think?
We're adjourned.